Welcome back to our YouTube channel called Neurodivergent Connections. It has been an absolute pleasure to share our lived experiences, to share kind of the lessons we've learned and our expertise over the last, I guess it's been a little more than a year. And this is going to be our last episode of Neurodivergent Connections. And who knows what the future will bring? I know I shared previously that I'm in the process of doing a docu-series. It's going to be at least 4 episodes, and Greg happens to be in that. And 4 couples from around the United States and 2 other coaches and therapists who work with neurodiverse couples. And I just think so much is happening in the world right now around neurodivergence and neurodiversity. You never know what's going to happen next with each one of us and maybe a partnership in the future. So for those that don't know me, I'm Mona Kay. I am the host of the Neurodiverse Love podcast, and I have all kinds of resources on my website, which is neurodiverselove.com. And I am going to turn it over to Greg so that he can introduce himself.
Hello, everybody. I'm glad to be here. Sad that it's our last episode, but grateful to have worked with Mona and Scott. This has really been cool. My name's Greg Fuqua. I am a licensed mental health counselor and coach in the state of Iowa. I focus on working with neurodivergent individuals and neurodiverse couples. Been in my own neurodiverse relationship for 34 years or something like that. And my wife's an ADHD, I'm an autistic. And yeah, excited to be here again. Thanks for showing up and watching. Scott, how about you? Who are you?
Howdy. I love that question. Who are you? I'm 52. I'm a dad. I had a wife. She died of cancer, leaving me a single dad. And I've been in a relationship for some years since, 7 or 8 years. And I only figured out this autism and ADHD stuff in the past few years. And a lot of what we're going to talk about today is fresh in my mind because it's still unraveling before me. It's still a process I'm engaging in. So let's get rocking.
Awesome, you guys. And as always, I forget to share that I identify as ADHD, and I was in my neurodiverse marriage for 30 years, and we didn't find out until our 29th year of marriage that we were a neurodiverse couple. So today we're going to talk about a topic that I think is really critical because I see it affecting both the neurodivergent partner, whether they're autistic, ADHD, or ADHD, and the non-autistic partner, and it's unmasking. And I'm going to share kind of what I see, and then I know we're going to have a great conversation around this. I often see, because there's so many people that I work with who are part of the lost generation, and those are folks that are probably 30 to 35 and older. So when they find out specifically that they're autistic or ADHD, they want to be their authentic self overnight. And for those folks that have been in a long-term relationship, their partner is like, yes, I support, my partner in being their most authentic self, but sometimes overnight, they don't even recognize the person they love. And they don't know what to do with that. Neither partner knows what to do with that because it feels important that the unmasking occur, but it feels sometimes devastating to the partner who married or committed to somebody that wasn't being their authentic self. And I don't have an answer for this, but I know we're going to have a great conversation because I know that in my marriage, there was a lot of masking going on. I think more from my ex than from me. And I felt bad, and I felt some shame, and I felt some guilt for being my authentic ADHD self, even though I didn't know I was ADHD. So I have a 6-page resume. I couldn't stay at a job for more than 2 years because I would get bored and I would go for the dopamine hit, and we traveled a lot and we moved across country 6 times. And I felt some guilt and shame around those things, but I was being more of my authentic self. I didn't change much after I found out that I was ADHD, but I know that that's not the case for a lot of folks that I work with. So with that said, I'll turn it over to you guys, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion because I think it's really important to a lot of couples.
Scott, tell us your experience with masking, what your thoughts are on it, and maybe your own experience around your awareness of masking. I mean, one thing that we know about you is you're really funny.
Well, thank
You're
you.
really
Thank
funny.
you.
You're really insightful. And I know that those can be sort of like things that we over rely on in masking,
Absolutely.
as a way to diffuse tensions and also to put forward our strengths, to sort of hide whatever else might be awkward or weird.
Yeah,
So,
if I can't be likable, like if being likable is a struggle, then if I can make people laugh, then at least I have them on that. And if they're not going to love me, they're less likely to hurt me if they're laughing, right? So whether it's a bully, like,
yeah.
and you
Yeah.
can make him laugh before he slugs you, or a partner who's about to go off on you for something strange you do, and if you can make it go, well, I'm just a silly goofball, ha ha ha, don't you love that? That maybe there's a way out of it. So I see the humor in it, but I didn't know masking existed as I don't know, a concept, a practice. It's the thing we talk about of covering up our expression so that no one catches us being weird, because being weird is dangerous and puts us in danger. And if somebody catches us being weird, things could go bad and we could be left all on our own. And we know that we need supportive people, and so we try to cover up the things that are going to give away that we're different. And so we play the roles. We do what we think we're supposed to do, and then we get frustrated because even when we think we're doing that perfectly, it still leaks out some other version of us that catches a lot of hell. When we feel we are right about something and acting as ourselves with our own intuition, we might go, to our partner for praise and go, didn't I do a good job? I figured this out of myself. And they'll say, what are you, an idiot? Why would you, any grown adult with a pair of eyes would have done it this way? And I'm like, you have no idea how small that makes me feel right now. And now I have to double down on processing everything that much more so that I take into account stuff I didn't think of that you're going to call me on. So what you can end up with is a partner who performs fairly well, but when they don't, it's enough to make you go, what the hell is wrong with you? So I had a relationship where there was some of that imbalance. I was tense all the time. They were tense all the time. But we seemed to be doing what each other had expected each other to do. And for a long time, I figured that's as happy gets. That's the best I can do, is do everything perfectly, and then I won't get in trouble. And eventually that might ferment into some kind of like deep, deep love with years of, but once I figure out all this, everything, I'll have somebody who loves me. Once I realized that I actually am different, that it's not bad, that my way of being is legit, and that I was right all along about the things I was saying. My way of seeing things was not an attempt to manipulate someone. It was an attempt to understand someone or say how I saw something. So I was once I figured out that this is autism and ADHD, if you want to look at it from a different angle, once I figured out that's what it was, that there were many other people like this in the world, that I wasn't the only one, that people like Mona have talked to a lot of the people, grown-up versions of these people, who have revealed the same patterns that emerge over and over and over again when different variables are in play in these relationships. And I'm like, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. I didn't know it was unmasking, but just having permission to go, okay, maybe I am okay. Maybe I'm not a broken person. Maybe my version of reality is legit, and that it's worth standing up for. And that I want to try living in this. I want to try a world where doing things the conventional way is not my default approach. I'm going to come at it going, whatever's going to work for me is probably going to be weird. Let's go.
Do you feel that becoming your authentic self and unmasking whether you knew that's what you were doing or not has impacted any of your relationships, especially the romantic ones, because I think that is really important for folks to hear.
Yes, that's what we're here
Yeah.
for.
Yeah.
So when that happened, at the time that I was like, oh, autism, it was on the heels of, oh, ADHD. But everything melted down in a way that still didn't make sense. It didn't make sense under the strictly ADHD way of looking at things. So once I zoomed out, saw autism, it all made sense. Once we got back together and I was able to get her on board with like, okay, we have to drop our expectations about how each other are and start living with how each other are. And stop trying to make this relationship fit what we've always thought a relationship is supposed to be from wherever we heard this. We need to start doing this based on what works for us. And that was not always easy, because having two people reject the world's expectations is tough. Because for probably one of those people, the expectations were working just fine, or so they thought. Because what I've learned through this is by analyzing everything, putting everything up for analysis and saying, does this have to be this way? Why are we doing it this way? What is the problem if it's not this way? And just going through that process with every little thing. Where do I keep my toothbrush? Who has stuff in drawers at somebody else's house? Who's paying for dinner? Who's assuming they're making plans? All of these things are become up for discussion. And because they're discussed, they're communicated. And because they're communicated, we go through why we're asking for what we're asking for and what we need changed. Then we can negotiate, find something that works. So we went from both of us expecting that we would talk on the phone every night for probably an hour, that we would see each other at almost any cost every weekend, and without discussing it, somehow make it equitable that we're each going to each other's house a fair number of times. So there isn't a blow up every 6 months about, I'm always going to your house and it's like you don't even like being here. Then we had the discussions of, do I even like being there? Is there something about being in somebody else's house that makes it look on my face like I'd rather be anywhere else the whole time I'm there? Because sometimes there is. Now that's up for discussion. So I don't know if it's overstating it to say that it took the relationship from feeling like an awkward improv performance with unclear expectations to just playing. Because now we're playing in a big picture. Now we've got the fundamentals laid down, and whatever happens, for the first time in my life, I feel like there actually is a connection now. Like I'm not constantly competing to meet an expectation so that I get to win another day. I feel like there is a long term for the first time in my life that even if I do something dumb, like forget a thing or whatever, even if I do, that's going to be okay.
Because you're unmasked and you're being your authentic self, and you're
Yes.
both learning how to understand each other's needs and how your brains work and how your bodies thrive and all of that stuff is what I'm hearing.
And
Is
I
that
think
correct?
the big expectation beneath all of it,
Yeah.
as it is in so much of what we deal with, is dropping the assumption that there's one right way to be.
Yes.
You
Okay,
may
so-
like your way very much, and that's okay. But to say that it is the right way and the way that others must do it,
Yeah.
we don't do that anymore. And I think dropping that allowed the rest of it to happen.
Awesome. Got to ask before Greg chimes in, tell us about the difficulties. Did you guys break up? Did you have a lot of fights before you got to the point where you got to this understanding? Because that's what I see with a lot of couples. They're on the
Yes.
verge of ending the relationship because they haven't said, we're going to take, I don't know, 6 months, a year, 2 years to really figure this stuff out before
Yes.
we give up. Because you're
Yes.
literally in a brand new relationship once you understand that one or both of you is neurodivergent. You're no longer the same people. You just
No, we're not. And at least on the outside, we definitely don't appear to be the same people. Because again, everything's up for change. And because the other person isn't in my head, they have no idea why I've suddenly started doing a thing or stopped doing a thing. If I just show up as a different person, I could see why that's unsettling. Until, I don't know. Yes, there were breakups, and they weren't like a sit down, I don't think we should see each other anymore because of these. No, it was more like something reached a breaking point. Somebody, not me, would blow up and say something that hurt the other person very much. And then it's like, blah, 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 you suck. Boom. And then, you know, what happens, Greg, Mona, when that happens is you're just sit there left wondering, I don't quite know what happened, but I'm pretty sure it's my fault, and I'm pretty sure it's over.
Yeah.
And now I'm just going to spend the next week perseverating and ruminating on why didn't I see this coming and all that stuff. Once we got through a couple of those,
Yeah.
because when she would come back, it was not like it's not like somebody cheated. It's not like somebody did a big betrayal. It's not like somebody stole from somebody else here. This was, we could see that it was a disagreement of expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And because everything was up for discussion, I was ready to go, hey, I'm not saying I'm going to change a damn thing, but let's talk about what happened.
I love that.
So it did take a lot of struggle, and I'm sure it's going to continue to take a lot of struggle because life's circumstances change, stresses change, and everything that makes me inconsistent and sometimes unreliable is going to be here as long as I'm alive. So we need to anticipate that there's going to be irritations and have them just not be fatal.
Right.
Like, I'm all for problems, just not, they don't have to be fatal. They don't have to blow up in a way that makes somebody else think this is the end of the world.
Right. If you're both committed to continuing to learn and grow and even heal, because there's got to be repair, because there's going to be hurt.
Well,
you know?
at the time that we started this, Mona, I swear I had never heard of repair. I didn't know that relationship repair was something that people did until I think I started doing this show with you guys. And you, Mona, especially, bring up something that does not cross my mind when these things cross my mind, is that should I even be in this relationship? That's a step that I know you professionals always consider, because I asked the AI before we came here today, what kinds of things am I likely to want to talk about? And they're like, well, deciding whether you even want to be in the relationship. I'm like, doesn't think about it. I just assume I gotta be until somebody else says it's over.
Yeah. Very interesting. Scott, thank you so much for sharing all that.
Yeah,
because
I felt like that was a monologue, but it was fun.
No, but the vulnerability was, I think, so important and is going to hit home for a lot of people. Greg, what are your thoughts? Because you're in a 30+ year relationship, and I know you've talked about, the challenges you guys have had.
Yeah, I've got all kinds of thoughts around masking. Number one is that I never knew I was masking. I don't think I was a good masker, so I think my default was avoidance, shyness, apprehension, social anxiety, don't say something, or pretend that I'm cool and funny and smart, when those opportunities could arise. But my defaults, particularly when I was younger, I was just paralyzingly shy. And so I think one thing that, if we have time to talk about, we can talk about, what does it mean to mask? How do you know you're masking? How do you spot somebody that's masking? Or maybe an autistic that's masking? What does that look like? But we don't have to sort of get into that. But what I'll say is that when I figured out, and my wife figured out before I did, that I was autistic, and I came to her and I said, I think this is what's going on here. And she's like, yeah, we kind of already knew that, that whole story. And I was doing my own therapy for a while. And so I was unmasking, and I did it through emotional therapy. And so here's a big part of masking. It's emotional vulnerability. So early on, as children, I think autistics get embarrassed, shocked, hurt very badly in being unedited and being themselves. And they learn very quickly that it's not okay. It's not safe. to do that. And I learned that about emotions very quickly. It's not okay to have meltdowns, to have shutdowns, to be a crybaby, to be emotional, to be scared. I was a guy, so again, this all goes back to really what this masking is, which is essentially a social adaptation around social anxiety, that is trying to manage neurotypical social conditioning and expectations. And so when I didn't fit in, I learned to repress my emotions. I learned to be quiet. Eventually, I learned that I could be clever and funny. And then I got in trouble at school all the time for being the clown because I didn't, again, understand what was appropriate, when was it appropriate, what types of things were appropriate, but I got positive, right, reinforcement around that. And so then I started identifying as kind of the trouble kid, right? Since I didn't have good emotional connection with myself, I became very, very angry and very, very repressed and suppressed emotionally. And I was a fighter. I was a violent little kid. I got in fights. If people challenged me, I didn't know what to do, but I wasn't going to take it. But so I was doing this emotional work, this therapy, before I sort of identified myself and sort of figured it out by taking the assessments I was giving my clients. And I would say what happened was definitely our relationship got better. But part of that was my ability to be vulnerable about what was really going on inside of me. Instead of acting out of it, I was talking about it.
Hmm.
I was saying, I'm.
It's okay, take your time. This is really powerful, Greg, because I literally was talking to a couple this week that are having this exact issue. The wife is saying, I really need him to be vulnerable. I need him to share what he's feeling. I need him to share his emotions. And I think what you're saying is probably what's going on in thousands and thousands of couple relationships. And it just hasn't felt safe for the autistic or ADHD partner to share their emotions, to share their feelings because they were bullied, they were beat up, they were ridiculed. And again, you're dealing with a brand new relationship because
Plus, you have
that's
the whole whole social thing of you're a man, you're being vulnerable.
yeah,
How dare you?
yeah, which is the crock of shit. So
Yeah.
I think what you're saying is so, so important.
And anyhow, one of the promises I made to myself was, what you're seeing is to feel what I need to feel and to show that. And I would say things to my wife like, I'm I'm feeling anxious about this, or I don't feel safe doing this. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I want to do this. And the way my wife met that was really amazing. Um, which is, thank you. Tell me what you need. Just know I'm here for you. And immediately calmed my system. I'm like, whoa, I've got safety. Everything I've been wired to learn about being emotional, being vulnerable, um, can be okay. Um, and I noticed at the time I was teaching art at local universities and a local arts center. And I'm like, I don't know what this means in front of 20, 25 students. But again, I kept my promise. And again, I was able to be vulnerable in front of my students. I was able to have tears in front of my students. I was able to connect with my students. And what I found was the gravity people had towards me was so much stronger. There were also people that clearly hated me that much more too. But there was definitely a skew toward more people seemed to like me or love me. And I could take the people that didn't like me so much easier because I wasn't people pleasing. I wasn't masking anymore. And I was like, and this goes to one of my huge couples principles and what's one of my singles datings principles with my clients, and that is accuracy is more important than preserving the relationship.
Mm-hmm, 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 mm-hmm.
So it doesn't work to mask because you're creating a false standard for which to fall in love with somebody, with which to connect with people. And so we have to have accuracy, otherwise we're building false relationships on false premises. Um, so those were some of the really big changes I saw. Now, I've helped identify so many autistics in relationships, and this is so true. I got this back so often, which is my client would come back and say, "My partner's really upset," and I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?" Um, since I told them, which I didn't really tell them, but we figured out that you're autistic. Now they're like, now you're really acting autistic. Like this is fake. This is BS. And I'm like, listen, not only am I a type of therapist that always encourages to bring in partners, relationships, families, whoever into the space because I believe so much everything's relational and relationships are so important. But I said, let them know that it's an honor for them to see you unmasked and to feel safe near you and to be able to do that. And I think that is so important to understand. Now, of course, the partner is going to go unfair. This isn't what I signed up for, you
Right.
know?
Sure, that seems reasonable.
Right? But now we have accuracy over just trying to preserve the relationship off of false premise standards or whatever. So I think these things are really important to understand. And again, I think a lot of autistics probably don't know they're masking as much as they are. They know that they're completely exhausted and have to have recovery after a social engagement. They know they practice scripts. They know they rerun social interactions over and over and over in their head. There are all these things there, but I think everyone does mask, and that is
Absolutely.
not to undercut
Yeah.
the level of intensity and effort required by an autistic to mask,
Mhm.
because we learn to observe and we learn to sit back and watch. And this is why I think a lot of neurodivergents are psychologists, social workers, therapists, because we're like undercover aliens that have been dropped into some world, and our whole job has been to not to be found out and to fit in. And we've had to study anthropologically what's going on from a zero baseline. So it really is an honor to be able for someone to be themselves around you, and it invites and is a contagion for more people to do that themselves. And so we have to see, again, what are the strengths here? I've got some ideas about how better to mask, because I'm not sure if we should completely unmask. I think we do have to know what's appropriate when. We do have to protect ourselves from getting hurt or looking dumb or all those things. We also have to really be able to relax and honor our uniqueness at the same time. It's a very difficult negotiation. I do have some ideas about how to do that and how I did that. But I'm going to turn it over to you, Mona. Otherwise, I'll keep talking forever.
Well, I definitely want to hear all that. And as the non-autistic in the group, but as the ADHDer and having been married for 30 years, I really do feel that my ex-husband was masking for 29 years. Okay. I really, really do. I've never had
Yeah.
this conversation with him
Yeah.
because during our separation, now looking back, he was unmasking. And some of the things he said were, I never want to talk to anybody that isn't interested in the things I'm interested in. And and that caught me off guard. I'm like, so you never want to talk to me about any of my interests? No, I'm done with that. Okay, fine,
If
whatever.
given the choice, yeah.
Right. So I understand, right? And another thing, I mean, there are a lot of things that were said during the separation that made me understand he's probably the masking for the majority of our marriage. But another thing he said is, I want to grow old with somebody who I can sit on the front porch with and we say absolutely nothing to each other. And I thought, oh my God, are we not going to survive this? Because I don't know how to shut up. Okay. So those are just two examples, right? And here's where I think it's important for couples to really think about what is most important in a romantic relationship for them. Because for me, communication on a regular basis is important. So if the man that I'm with, as he's unmasking, says, I'll talk to you for maybe 5 minutes once a week, we're done. We're just done. It's not going to work for me. Or I've been having sex and I've been holding your hands and I've been doing all this stuff and I'm so unbelievably uncomfortable and in pain. I'm not doing it anymore. That would be a deal breaker for me, right? So I tell couples and I tell individuals, understand yourself and what you need in a romantic relationship. And then starting from that point, you can have conversations with your partner about what is most important. And you can, maybe it's a negotiation, maybe it's just a conversation, maybe it's kind of a realization that you're not compatible anymore, or you're so compatible that this relationship's going to thrive in ways that you couldn't even imagine when one or both of you was masking. So those are some of the things that I think are really important, because once one partner starts unmasking, you may not be compatible anymore. And that's
And
okay.
that's okay.
Right.
We both
That's
did it at the same
okay.
time.
Right. That's okay. So yeah, Scott, what are your thoughts, or Greg?
That's accuracy over preserving the relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'd rather get out of a relationship because I know what's true than stay in a relationship because we're both in agreement on what's false.
Amen.
That was probably more profound than I meant it to sound. I hope this is a continuity of the discussion and not a diversion of the discussion. But what you were just going through made me think of something. A lot of the unmasking we talk about comes out as, here are changes that you will notice in me. Now that I know myself, here are changes here, and I'm able to express myself as myself. Here's how you might notice me different. I might stay up late. I might not be around as much. I might wear funny clothes. I might spend a lot of money on guitars. Whatever it is for you. What if, through the honesty that comes through this unmasking, the unmasking, fresh, autistically thinking individual comes to their partner with great intentions and say, listen, please, I mean this with the best of intentions, but I want you to do something different. Like, I have sensitivities. I need you to shave. Or that shirt you wear gives me headaches. I love you, but please don't wear that. I know it's your favorite shirt. Like, things that are going to seem to the other partner as, who the hell are you now? You've never asked me for anything. You've just you've done your best to go along with whatever I want. And now you're turning around and asking me for something when I'm the one who's upset. How do both sides handle that?
That's so perfect, because it's so perfect, so good. Because during my separation, my ex-husband and I were dating, and he said to me, I need to ask you never to scream at me again.
Oh,
I think that I was so dysregulating his nervous system, and I was a screamer. And I'm like, okay. And I never screamed at him again. But he didn't know how dysregulated he was from all the screaming. And I have heard couples, talk to me about, there are certain perfumes, there are certain cleaning fluids, there are certain, candles that have been lit in the house for a long time, and they are so dysregulating their partner and maybe even causing physical pain, headaches, all kinds of stuff, but the partner didn't speak up. I think that's so beautiful, Scott, because again, that's the authenticity, that's being real. And then those are things that can be they can be wins for both. I hear you, and I'm going to change that. That's not a
Yeah.
deal breaker,
Or
right?
even if they say, I can't change it and here's why.
Sure.
Then to me that is building of intimacy when you
Yes.
both come with the truth, with no intent to hurt each other and full intent to love each other. But and it sounds on paper like that's better than pretending like everything's fine and both of us being uncomfortable all the time. But it's
100%.
normal to apparently it's normal to lie to each other and say everything's great and I love to see you today.
Oh my God, I know. Going through this in my relationship right now. It's really funny. We're negotiating these things. And I'm listening and he's listening. And it's a beautiful thing. Do we sometimes get it wrong? Do we sometimes piss each other off? Do we sometimes have to say, oh, I think, he or she, he or I are a little upset, but I don't really understand why. Yeah. And what I love is there's so much communication, which I didn't have in my marriage because of the masking. So, one of the things that I would say to couples that really are resonating with this and they're going through this and they're trying to figure it out is really, if you can't do it alone, find somebody that can help you feel emotionally safe sharing what you're feeling, because I think so many couples that I work with have hurt each other so bad unintentionally for years, if not decades, and neither one of them feels emotionally safe in the relationship. So, how do you start unmasking and being yourself? How do you start asking questions regarding things you need if you literally have been screamed at every time you've done that in the
Mm.
past and you don't feel that you can trust that there is emotional safety in the relationship? Greg, any thoughts on that one, or Scott?
I, other than start small, start with easy wins, start with like I don't know what the parallel is in a relationship, but when people say, "How do I start speaking up for myself?" I say start with a sandwich. Go somewhere, order the sandwich you want. Order it the way you want it, whether it's on the menu or not. And if they bring it to you and it's wrong, practice sending it back. These are little assertive things to try rather than go to your wife and say, I haven't loved you since you were blonde. Like that's the wrong way to do that, I'm sure. But to
You
ask
think?
for something, in a way that you're confident is not going to make them blow up.
Yeah.
But even that's hard, man. Like even if it's usually safe, I'm so scared that like I'll find out later, like, no, that was not the right time or place to bring that up. That was totally the wrong place. And your message was fine. Your location and how you angled your face was wrong. Like it's still, even when you feel safe, it's still the fear of like, I'm gonna mess this one up.
And you are. Both partners are.
Well,
Yeah.
that's why all the communication you're talking about, to me, it has to have an opportunity for fun in there. When I acknowledge the ridiculousness of the detail in which we have to plan things, it becomes hilarious. It's like we're acting out a joke every time. It's like, all right, let's bring up the calendar. Who's going to whose house then? As opposed to like, you're coming to my house, right? Because it's only fair. Like,
And sometimes I'm just going to say, Scott, because my ex-husband would try to make things funny and it
oh,
would drive me nuts because I wanted him to be serious. So
oh, okay.
there's that balancing
You're
act. But
right. You're right.
I
You're right.
agree with you that we have to make it more fun, because if neurodiverse couples don't engage in some fun and laughter and joy, and they're just looking at all the shit that hasn't worked and they're trying to create a new relationship with an unmasked partner, I think you're going to go down that black hole of negativity.
Yeah,
I
it just occurred to me too that if the fun ever comes off as fake, that if my partner is acting like she's having fun, but I get the impression that under that she's really starting to get pissed off with me,
Yeah,
it's not safe anymore.
there you go. Yeah,
Greg,
there's so many nuances to this. Yeah. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, in terms of first things first, I think that number one, you have to have an awareness around what, what is true for you. A lot of autistics don't. And I don't know if that's wiring or if it's the lack of an observing ego, meaning be able to see myself, be able to have a sense of identity. But I even have, autistic people I work with, and I will ask them with their partner, okay, your partner's wanting this. What do you think of that? I don't know.
I hear it all the
And you
time.
can see the other
Yeah.
partner going, I'm always in limbo with you, and I'm doing all the mental labor, and I'm driving this whole life. So number one, there has to be awareness first, meaning you have to know what is going on in your body, how to listen to your intuition, how to listen to your anxiety, how to listen to tension. And for a lot of autistics, this is so endemic that it's not noticeable. As I say, if everything's blue, blue ceases to exist, you know? And we've
Everything's
also a
blue
lot,
unless it's very clearly green or very clearly orange. But I'm just going to assume it's blue unless there's some other sign that it should be something else.
there you go. We
Can
we
you wait,
have
wait,
to,
can you guys understand each other with that? But somebody who's not autistic, I understand what you're
Okay.
saying. But
How
can
about
you
this?
feel
When you
that one a little bit?
partner comes to me and says, "How do you feel about this?"
Hmm.
Unless it's way out in God no or
yeah,
in an unlikely hell yes. Otherwise, it's all right. I'm not going to fine.
exactly. And so part of the all or nothing or extreme nature of autism is trying things out. It's figuring it out. If I go all the way to here, does that hit me? Does that make sense? Does that match with me? Or does it not? And I often have people say, it seems like I go to extreme when I'm trying things. And I'm like, that's a really good creative principle, because if you make a little change, you're hardly going to detect it and you have nothing to reference. You have no dialogue with this thing. You have no compass or direction, really. It's like, something happened. I don't know what that is. So I think that's the kind of the idea here. So we need increased awareness around our bodies, our bodily cues. We need psychoeducation around what it means to be autistic so we can point at something, can make it tangible, make it concrete. Oh, that's what's going on. And now I've got a place to understand how I speak to and for myself. Okay. And we have been wired to cede authority to everybody else. And so if autism is a developmental delay, the development is around the development of identity and the ability to believe that, that we belong and that we are valid, and that, that our uniqueness is not something that's an outlier or a problem, but something that can actually be honored. So, secondly, I like the idea of play. And again, these go back to creative principles and being an artist and former art professor. I always, and autistics hate this, but anyhow, I often said to my students, they would be stuck with the white canvas, or the blank page, so to speak, okay, I need to figure out what I need to do here. What is this going to look like? How is this piece going to turn out? What am I going to do? And I'm like, nah, put down a mark and then recognize, how does that mark feel? Okay, now adjust the mark. Okay, now erase some of it. All right, now move it over. Now add something else. Okay, now you're in dialogue and you're having the freedom to find it out. Autistics have never had this. We have been paralyzed by the need for safety and the danger the rest of the world presents to us. Okay, so we need this creative freedom to sort of find it out. And if that means we need to take off some of the tension, absolutely. I'm so for that. And then we can have more accuracy. And so a lot of the coaching I do is coaching autistics to understand, what are they feeling? What is going on inside of them, and then how to communicate that. Those are big leaps and hurdles of skills to make. So there is a
And
lot
it
of
takes
sort of
practice too.
practice for sure. These are things you do have to practice. It's often a thing I talk to my couples about. This is practice. This is an exercise. This is what you're going to do. You're going to have to learn this. You're going to have to figure this out. And of course, we need safety to do that. So you don't have to know, but you do have to have the freedom to find out. Are we going to make that safe? So secondly, I would say, in order to make it safer, because one of my rules in couples work and neurodiverse couples work is, what we don't understand, we fill in negatively. is number one, that communication, that transparency helps with that, right? Because if nobody's talking and like, what the hell's going on here? What is wrong with you? This makes no sense to me. This is coming out of left field, and you have no reference for it because you are so different stylistically and personality wise, you're going to fill it in negatively. So we we need to be able to also speak for ourselves instead of externalizing and projecting what's going on inside of us. You're the problem. Okay. This is what happens with all my couples work is I'm like, you're not talking about your experience. You're characterizing and judging the other person. How are you going to meet them when that's the agenda? That's not safe. You have to be able to say, I feel like I'm struggling with this, or I'm not sure what's going on, but this is really hard for me. Now that is vulnerability and that invites connection, and protection and projection fosters disconnection. So we need to be able to be aware, to understand what we're feeling and experiencing, and be able to own it and be able to present that with, again, that vulnerability and that ownership as a way to start making that negotiation doable instead of making it, again, disconnective and argumentative and amplifying those arguments and those characterizations and the way we feel things in negatively.
So I,
Yeah,
I hear like you've got building blocks for us to get to this all working. Is we have to feel safe enough to believe that having an opinion matters and will not be stepped on, like that it's
Yes.
safe to have an opinion. Then we have to know how to see what our opinion is, because between our alexithymia, interoception, whatever, our feelings
Yep.
might whisper to us, and
Yep.
we're not used to even trying to hear them. So
Exactly.
then building a practice where we can spot what we think of things, and
Mhm.
then once it's safe and we can do it, figure out how to integrate that honestly. Do we go with baby steps? Like, are the things we start being honest about more, or giving opinions on
Yeah.
more?
Yeah. So my take is that, when you guys talked about the mistakes will happen. I feel better about an autistic person trying to explain something in an awkward and unelegant way, and maybe in an accusatory way, as a way to get to it.
Hmm.
And then I'm going to help them rework it. I'm going to help them re-own it. And I'm also going to help it filter and edit for the partner.
Okay.
Right. So this is what makes me, I think, a good therapist, is just because I'm really good at interpreting from both sides. Right. And so I can understand what this autistic person's getting at and say, okay, I think this is what this is about. And then I can model a different way of saying it. And then I'm sort of the translator, right, for
Could
the
you do
situation.
do you translate backward too? Like,
Yes.
hey, dude, she's not pissed off at who you are right now. She's just surprised to hear what you said.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's the weird thing about me working with neurodiverse couples is I found that I have enough middle ground or both understanding of both sides that I can bridge it both ways back and forth. And I tend to do a little bit better, obviously, with the autistic side, but I think I'm very good at doing that, and I think that's part of what needs to happen in a sense that I think a good therapist or coach is at some level a translator, a modeler, a filter, a way of helping create that safety and teaching them what it looks like, and also helping people get more accurate and better about creating safe and vulnerable communication.
I agree. And Greg, I've seen you do this. So I know that it is a tremendously positive skill set that you have. And I want to say to those folks that are not autistic, that are going through the unmasking process with the partner that you love and you still want to be with, their processing speed and the way in which they are learning about their, interoception, what's going on in their bodies, their emotions, their thoughts, their feelings, that they were people pleasing, whatever they were doing in the past, that they're working on changing, their processing speed is going to probably be slow on some things and really fast on others.
Yep.
And that's where I think a lot of couples get so challenged that it's like, I don't know that I can take the speed at which you're changing, and I don't know that I can take the speed at which it takes you to process stuff that
Right.
I'm sharing with you that is bothering me. Because I remember sometimes it would take days, sometimes it would take weeks for my ex to come back and say what I was seeking as a response 4 days ago. And I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Yeah.
So if you're sharing what you need from your partner who's unmasking and you're not getting a response in the moment, they need time to process it. But I think that has to be a
You also
conversation.
might need to ask for a response. Because if you
That
just
too,
say something and
that
you are
too.
expecting a response,
Well, see, here's the communication gaps or challenges. Because when I'm having a conversation with my partner or a friend or whoever, I'm expecting there to be a dialogue. But that's an expectation that I don't have anymore in neurodiverse relationships, whether it's a friendship, a coworker, or a romantic partner. I have to ask for it sometimes. Oh, you wanted a response. Yeah, I wanted
yeah.
to know what the
Oh, was
thought.
that a question? I thought you were just complaining.
Well, this is something I coach people on too, which is ask what the person wants. If you want to be a good listener, learn to be okay with saying, do you want some feedback on that? Did you just need me to listen to that? And always, you can always add empathy, and you can always ask more questions. That always seems to work, But to piggyback off of that, Mona, what I see in my autistic partners is emotional and energetic intensity creates or adds to that slowing and processing. The overwhelm that comes with someone with the energy and emotion that you have, Mona, for instance, and a lot of times we see this sort of opposite partnership with this, where the autistic partner is actually pretty flat, pretty chill, pretty calm all the time, and their partner is just bouncing off the walls, very energetic, very emotional, and then to engage with that, right, becomes very difficult. And then we see a lot of claps and shutdowns over and over again. And again, so there's stuff to do from both sides in order to make that bridge, and it does take a lot of work. It does take a lot of resetting. It does take a lot of negotiation and collaboration. It's always a dynamic and it's always both sides. And to remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
so
your
critical.
autistic partner goes from blah 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 to like one word every 3 or 4 seconds with their eyes going like this between every word, they're they're not feeling safe. Because in
No.
my head, when I'm in that way, I'm like, I have to be really careful because the next
Mhm.
word that comes out of my mouth might be the end of everything.
Yeah. And so that's really important in the unmasking process, right? So I have to be aware of what my partner might be feeling, and my partner has to be aware of what I might be feeling. However, when one or both of us is triggered, that's time for a pause. Let's not continue this conversation. And I can't tell you how many times I should have said that in my marriage, and I do it in my current relationship. But I didn't say it in my marriage. I would keep the discussion going for hours where we're both triggered. He was probably so flooded, it was overwhelming to his nervous system. And I was, just on automatic kind of getting the words out without stopping for hours and hours and hours, like the Energizer Bunny. None of it was good. So to kind of wrap up for folks that are going through this unmasking process, what they might want to think about as they're moving forward. I'm just going to say, for me, the things that I think are most important, and I know you guys have different things, is really getting clarity on what you need and want in a romantic relationship. Because the person you fell in love with might not be the person who you're with anymore. And if some of your non-negotiables are no longer going to be in your romantic relationship, it's important information for you to process, right? And you can still love each other and you can still have respect for each other and care and be friends. but maybe no longer be compatible. That's the little ending piece that I wanted to share with our listeners. Greg and Scott, what about you?
Yeah, I would say that, part of what you're speaking to, which I'll just mention real quick, and then I'll sort of move to kind of my last piece, which is individual growth puts stress on relational growth. So if suddenly I'm unmasking, I have grown very quickly, and there's been a huge gap and now change between one another. If you can then grow together, that's fine. But if you realize that that distance is now too big, you've literally grown apart, right? And so this is something I see all the time as an individual and couples person. So that's something to think about, I guess. And then secondly, I would say in terms of masking and unmasking, the way to do it, I believe, is to number one, is to get really more accurate about your own goodness and your own good intentions. So one of the questions I often give my clients is, if you look deep down inside of you, are you good? And of course, who's defining good? So they often ask me, what does it mean to be good? And I say, number one, that you have good intentions, that you don't want to hurt people, you want things to go well. If you did make a mistake, you'd learn from it. If you did hurt somebody, you try to make it right. That's it. And I'm like, what else? That's it. There's no outcomes here. It's whatever your inherent intentions are and how you honor them. That is your shield against being perceived and judged outside of you. If you can trust yourself, if you have that place to work from, which is, I know I'm good. I know my intentions are good. I know I care about myself and others. I know I want to make it right. That's all you have. That's all you need. And then the second piece I would say is learn to partner with your masking parts. Your masking parts take over out of a feeling of threat and a belief that you can't take care of yourself and you're going to get hurt. So if now you have this center of goodness that you work from, that you have more trust with yourself and you can relax, you're going to need your masking parts still at times. I know I do. And I create intention around like, oh, I need you. I've got this thing coming up. I'm relaxed about it. And there's sort of this partnership. I'm sort of holding hands with them. Sometimes they show up for me, and I'll be relaxed enough to be insightful and meet that social moment well, because these parts do hold all those skills for you, but they drain you when they have to show up for you, right? Because there's this constant hypervigilance and threat feeling in your system. They take over. Now you're exhausted. Now you got to recover. So I want you to partner with your masking parts more. Know that they're there for you, and you're going to immediately see an increase in spoons and capacity. And this is kind of what I do: is I relax, I trust, I know where I'm working from as a person, and then I partner with my masking parts. I want them with me in social situations, and I don't feel nearly as drained as much. And so I think those are just good things to be thinking about and good tools to use for people.
Thanks, Greg. What about you, Scott?
I love listening to Greg talk. He's so wise.
He is.
I enjoy he says such smart things, and I agree with all of them, but there's no way I would have picked those words. So I'll try to. I've got a couple things that I hope are in the same spirit, but shorter sentences. Be curious about yourself. If you're the unmasking one, be curious about who you are. Know that to me, anyway, unmasking isn't like unzipping your human suit and then climbing it and going, I've been here all along. That would be fun, and maybe at Halloween. But it's something you grow into. It's like puberty. It's not like you wake up one day and you're all hairy and erect and just smelly. It happens to some, I'm sure, but it's stuff grows in. You get taller, you walk differently because you're changing, and you grow into that. I see unmasking as another development phase almost. Is that now that it is safe to go through this metamorphosis, let's do it. We don't know where it's going to go. There's not a different version of me that's always been here. No, I developed with the mask. I developed with the stresses. I developed with the fear. Who I am now is built on all of that stuff that I was trying to cover up before. Now I get an opportunity to grow again and re-examine all of it. So expect change. Don't expect it all to stick. Don't expect that who you think you are the day you decide to unmask is who you're going to be next week even. It can be a bit of a frenzy, being like, I guess it's like coming out when you never thought coming out would ever happen for you or would never be safe. You might go all in, and it might look really weird to people around you, because in a way it's kind of like the born again experience, where to everyone else you're the same guy they saw at brunch last week, but to you the entire universe has changed and your whole reason for being is different. They just see you're wearing the same shirt you did last week. You're not this. Why are you acting different? So to the people who are in the sphere of the unmasking, try to be patient. Be curious. Don't take it too personally, and just know things are going to change. Everything in life changes anyway. There's pretty much nothing that is permanent and forever and static. This is just a bit more change than most people are used to at once. You want your partner to grow. If it grows in a direction that just doesn't work for you, Mona and Greg both have lots of insight and tools into how you can assess. Discernment is the word that I always think of. Whenever I hear the word discernment now, I think of Mona, because that's where I first ran into that word on one of her podcasts. So yeah, constants aren't, variables don't. Be patient, be curious, have fun, be safe. You're going to want to do all the things, and then you're going to not want to do them. But yeah, it's an interesting process, and I feel wins and losses aside, I feel more me than I've ever been, and I know I'm only partly way there. There's a lot more room for me to stand up and say, this is what I want, this is what I'll put up with, this is what I need, because it's all a growing process. At the beginning, you don't know what you're allowed to need. You don't know what. I found out, Mona and Greg, that there are couples who will ask each other to go get them a bottle of water. Is that nuts? Did you know you could do that? And
or could you make me what you're making for yourself? Could you make me some?
Yeah. See, I asked that because I know if I don't, like, did you think of that making me some? Right. Not my current partner, but yeah. And the fun thing is, when you unmask, you get to be polite because it's your idea to be generous and polite, not because you're rehearsing a script that you got in trouble for missing once. Yeah, you get to be more authentic in everything.
Yeah, and I have to add this because as you were talking, Scott, this came up in my head. There are the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse that the Gottmans talk about. Right, Julie and John Gottman. They've been doing research for over 50 years with couples. I think a lot of the couples they've worked with and they've written about in their books are definitely neurodiverse couples, but their focus isn't neurodiverse couples. But one of the horsemen of the apocalypse is defensiveness. Okay. And I do think that in the unmasking process, there can be a lot of defensiveness on both parts, and that can be so detrimental to your relationship. So instead of getting defensive, the antidote could be to be curious, right? And catch yourself when you're getting defensive, because I see this a lot in couples coaching, and I'm like, time out. We've got to kind of take the defensiveness off the table and get curious, because otherwise you are not going to be a safe person for your partner. And it doesn't matter which partner gets defensive. I know it's probably a go-to for a lot of people. I didn't do that. You did whatever. I mean, we can talk about defensiveness forever, but it's a caution that I would throw out to folks that are listening.
I think you can take a step further real quick.
Go for it.
And turn your curiosity into positive assumptions. And when I work this with couples, okay, so I know how you're feeling about this and how you're taking this. If we can pretend that you can have a positive assumption about this person's intent, what would it be? And then I check in with the other partner, they write spot on. And that's 95% of the time, maybe even more. So again, a lot of times it's very easy to become defensive, and everyone's got these histories that, with resentment and hurt there too. But positive assumptions, hard to get to, but usually accurate.
Yeah, and the thing is, so many neurodiverse couples talk about impact versus intent.
Right.
We can look at the
Yep.
positive assumptions because I'm assuming negative. When I
Yep.
use the word assuming, I'm
Yep.
making an ass out of you and me.
Right.
It's negative, but I love the positive assumptions, right? And then listening to what the intent was and also listening to what the impact was without getting defensive, because that's where you can have unbelievable connection and understanding. Oh my gosh, I see it happen over and over and over again. And tears or a look, towards the partner saying, that's what you meant? That's where you were coming from?
Yep.
And they're like, holding hands. It's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's hard. It's really, really hard, but it's beautiful when you can do it.
When
So
that lens shifts from "you're an asshole" to "oh my God, I love you," like, oh, that must be rewarding for when you see that happen.
it is so awesome. But, then you've got to change the way you are in the relationship in order for it to continue. Or otherwise, it's just a one-off with a coach or a therapist helping to facilitate it. So it's a lot of work. So, you guys, this has been a great discussion, a great way to end neurodivergent connections for us. For those of you that are looking for some additional resources, you can go to my website at neurodiverselove.com. I do coaching for individuals and couples. And I also have a bunch of other resources like the Neurodiverse Love cards and the workbook, and I'm working on the docuseries. Greg, where can folks reach you? And then Scott, where can folks reach you?
Easy to find me at gregfuqua.com. And yeah, my contact information, email, phone numbers there. Yeah, reach out to me.
And you do coaching and you do therapy in Iowa. You do coaching all over the world.
Yes.
Yeah. And you're
Yep.
available for speaking engagements and workshops and all kinds of
Yes.
other stuff. And Scott, what about you?
I have had the website bigasssuperstar.com for about 25 years. And there's rarely anything spectacular there, but there are usually pointers to where I am doing spectacular things on one of the many little digital campsites I've set up here and there in my backpacking across the World Wide Web. So I'm out there. I'm just not in anywhere for very long, it seems. So bigasssuperstar.com is the central clearinghouse, updated once every 5 or 6 years.
Okay. You guys, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. And, reach out to any of us if you need more information or if you'd like to work with any of us. And thank you all for tuning in and listening to what we've had to share over the last year or so. Thanks, everybody.